Greetings folks, your friendly neighborhood Rictus Gate here. In this video I just want to introduce an idea I have. I don't know if it'll fly. If anybody's interested, then hit me up. Send me a PM, whatever it is. Google, plus, whatever, comment. If you're interested. It's a book reading club via Hangouts. I think that would be a cool kind of exercise to partake in. Where we take a book and read it on our own, chapter by chapter, and then come together once a week, once every couple of weeks in the Hangout live to discuss our thoughts about that chapter. I think it'd be interesting exercise to see what other people think about certain things. I don't care what your stripe is, what your affiliation is, what your card is that you carry in your wallet. It doesn't matter to me. All are welcome. But the stipulation is you're reading the book, or you have an interest at least in what this book subject is. So, with that in mind, I have an idea for a book, one that I'm reading already, but I'm more than willing to start reading it again and reread, is on being certain. So in that spirit, I would like to read the preface to see if anybody is interested, then please contact me. Certainty is everywhere. Fundamentalism is in full bloom. Legions of authorities cloaked in total conviction tell us why we should invade country X, ban the adventures of Huckleberry Finn in schools, or eat stewed tomatoes. How much brain damage is necessary to justify a plea of diminished capacity, the precise moment when a sperm and an egg must be treated as a human being, and why the stock market will eventually revert to historical returns. A public change of mind is national news. But why? Is this simply a matter of stubbornness, arrogance, and/or misguided thinking? Or is the problem more deeply rooted in brain biology? Since my early days in neurology training, I have been puzzled by this most basic of cognitive problems. What does it mean to be convinced? At first glance, this question might sound foolish. You study the evidence, weigh the pros and cons, and make the decision. If the evidence is strong enough, you are convinced that there is no other reasonable answer. Your resulting sense of certainty feels like the only logical and justifiable conclusion to a conscious and deliberate line of reasoning. But modern biology is pointing in a different direction. Consider for a moment an acutely delusional schizophrenic patient telling you with absolute certainty that three-legged Martians are secretly tapping his phone and monitoring his thoughts. The patient is utterly convinced of the realness of the Martians. He knows that they exist, even if we can't see them, and he is surprised that we aren't convinced. Given what we now know about the biology of schizophrenia, we recognize that the patient's brain chemistry has gone amok, resulting in a wildly implausible thoughts that can't be talked away with logic and contrary evidence. We accept that his false sense of conviction has arisen out of a disturbed neurochemistry. It is through extreme examples of brain malfunction that neurologists painstakingly explore how the brain works under normal circumstances. For example, most readers will be familiar with the case of Phineas Gage, the Vermont laborer whose skull and frontal region of the brain were pierced with an iron bar during an 1848 railroad construction accident. Miraculously, he lived, but with a dramatically altered personality. By gathering together information from family, friends, and employers, his physicians were able to piece together one of the earliest accurate descriptions of how the frontal lobe affects behavior. Back to the pesky Martians. If Phineas Gage's post-traumatic personality change led to a better understanding of our normal frontal lobe functions, is the schizophrenic's certainty that the Martians are listening to his thoughts a clue as to the origins of our sense of conviction? What is this patient telling us about the brain's ability to create the unshakable belief that what we feel, that we know is, in fact, unequivocally correct? Are certainty and conviction purely deliberate, logical, and conscious choices, or not what they appear? For me, the evidence is overwhelming. The answer is startling and counterintuitive, yet unavoidable. The revolutionary premise at the heart of this book is, despite how certainty feels, it is neither a conscious choice nor even a thought process. certainty, and similar states of knowing what we know arise out of involuntary brain mechanisms that, like love or anger, function independently of reason. To dispel the myth that we know what we know by conscious deliberation, the first section of the book will show how the brain creates the involuntary sensation of knowing, and how this sensation is affected by everything from genetic predispositions to perceptual illusions common to all bodily sensations. Then we can see how this non-reasoned feeling of knowing is at the heart of many seemingly irresolvable modern dilemmas. I am a neurologist with a novelist sensibility. Though I have tried to make this book as accurate as possible, there will be many areas of controversy and frank disagreement. My goal is not to defend each argument against all criticism, but rather to generate a discussion about the nature and limitations of how we know what we know. To keep the book from being too dense or riddled with jargon, I have relegated more technical details, explanations, most personal digressions, and bibliography to the endnotes. I must also confess to an underlying agenda. A stance of absolute certainty that precludes consideration of alternative opinions has always struck me as fundamentally wrong. But such accusations are meaningless without the backing of hard science. So I have set out to provide a scientific basis for challenging our belief in certainty. An unavoidable side effect, the scientific evidence will also show the limits of scientific inquiry. But in pointing out the biological limits of reason, including scientific thought, I'm not making the case that all ideas are equal, or that scientific method is mere illusion. I do not wish to give ammunition to the legions of true believers who transform blind faith into evidence for creationism, alien abduction, or Aryan supremacy. The purpose is not to destroy the foundations of science, but only to point out the inherent limitations of the questions that science asks and the answers it provides. My goal is to strip away the power of certainty by exposing its involuntary neurological roots. If science can shame us into questioning the nature of conviction, we might develop some degree of tolerance and an increased willingness to consider alternative ideas. From opposing religious or scientific views to contrary opinions at the dinner table. A personal note. The schema that I am about to present has given me an unintended new way of seeing common problems. It isn't that I think about each issue and how it relates to neurobiology. Rather, the very notion of how we know, even how we ask questions, has shaped how I feel and respond to everything from daily news to pillow talk with my wife to age-old philosophical questions. The sense of an inner quiet born of acknowledging my limitations has been extraordinary. I would like to share this with you. So, if anybody's interested, hit me up. Maybe we can start in the new year, but maybe we can figure some things out. What's a good schedule? If anybody's interested. But I would be very interested in this. The Hangout Reading Club. Try it out. Talk to folks later.